What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about electric kettles and how popular these are in Britain. Now, to be honest, the kettle might as well be a piece of alien technology to us Americans. Like, for whatever reason, we do not have this. We heat up our water in like pans on the stove or in the microwave, you know? So I don't know why. I don't know where along the line we missed out on this, but today I'm just interested in learning about the electric kettle and like how it works and why it's so popular in Britain, but like non-existent here in America. So, with that being said, let's take a look.
Did you know that electric companies actually can tell when a huge moment in British television is happening or just happened due to the electric surge coming from everyone putting their kettle on? I don't know why.
What? Wait. Oh, that is the perfect way to spell out the difference between electric kettles in America and Britain. Like, that is a really incredible fact. Like, you can tell just based on the increase in use of electricity in Britain when, when like a show or something important is happening in British homes because everyone is turning on their electric kettle, like everyone's making some tea or something at the same exact time. That's funny.
I did that in quotes because they are actually putting their kettle on, but it's also kind of like a phrase in the UK.
Okay.
Anyway, they're all putting their kettle on at the same time.
No way.
I swear to you, this is a real documented thing. For instance, in 2010, Coronation Street, which is a British soap opera, did an episode all about a tram disaster.
Okay.
And the British public all raced to their kettles to make themselves a cup of tea to calm themselves down because the National Grid noticed that the surge of the demand at the end of Coronation Street was higher than usual.
Wow. You know what that also just shows is like how freaking popular kettles are in Britain, and I guess by extension how popular tea is. Is that like getting to the crux of the matter here? It's like, do us Americans just not care about electric kettles? Or a lot of us, like, I didn't even know about electric kettles for a long time. Seriously. Like, seriously, not until, like, relatively recently in my adult life. I didn't know they even existed. Like, you just don't see them ever, anywhere. I don't know anyone who owns one. I can't emphasize this enough. And I guess it just boils down to, pun intended, it just boils down to the fact that we don't have a tea culture here. So we have no real use for this. I assume the number one use for this is making tea, right? Like heating up water for tea.
Another example is that during King Charles's coronation, the National Grid saw another huge spike that required the teams behind the scenes to make sure they balanced the electricity supply and demand with a close eye, so all of those kettles didn't disrupt the system.
Oh my god. Like, the British kettle usage could, like, bring down the power grid or something. This is a danger. It's amazing how consistently, like, apparently the majority of British people consistently, they go home, and if they're watching a show or watching the news or something dramatic happens, like, most Brits' immediate instinct is just like, you know what? Let's put on some tea. Let's put on the kettle. Let's make some tea. Let's calm down here and settle in. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Next up in our deep dive into kettles is the actual percentage of households in the UK that own one.
I want to know this because, gosh, what's the percentage of American households that own a kettle? I mean, from my point of view, 0. But there's got to be some weird Americans out there who like are making tea, trying to be healthy or something, and have discovered this long lost British technology. I'd be surprised if it was over 1% of Americans. Seriously. What percent of British have a kettle?
The most recent statistics I could find are from around 2017, with a 95% of households owning an electric kettle.
95%? That's actually more than I was even thinking. 95%? That's basically almost everyone. Like so wow. That's actually really eye-opening for me. So, in Britain, like having a kettle is basically a given. It's it's strange if you don't have an electric kettle. Is that what I'm getting from this? That is so different. Is there any other piece of technology or household item that even comes close to this difference between British and American culture? The kettle is something like significant, like kind of amazing how different it is. Like when you think about it.
It's fluctuated between 94 and 98% since 2005. But
Wow.
this is what I mean when I say that truly a majority of households own them. And
Yeah.
I'm not even sure who the extra 5% are, but they clearly just moved to the UK and just haven't purchased a kettle yet. Or they're
Right.
American expats who are microwaving their water.
Wow, yeah, those weird. You're weird if you have a kettle here in America, and you're weird if you don't have one in Britain. This, I'm guessing that this just means 95% or more of British households, like, consistently want to have tea during the day, so they need an electric kettle. I think that's basically what this amounts to, right?
I don't know. Here's another fun fact about kettles. Don't know if that has actually ever been said in a sentence before. But while they are very efficient, there is a lot of wasted energy from them.
Oh.
In 2013,
Oh, look at this. It's like boiling the water. This is this must sound so silly. Like I've never seen an electric kettle in action. I've never seen one up close. Never turned it on. So it can boil water, just to be clear. I didn't know if you just need to like heat it up very hot. I don't know what temperature you want your tea at or that it's good at. So these electric kettles get pretty freaking hot. This actually can boil the water inside. Like an old tea kettle or a teapot like would, right? And do these like let steam out as well? It must, right? I don't know. I now my brain's just like all over the place. Kind of mesmerized by this kettle stuff.
the Energy Savings Trust estimated that 3/4 of British households boil more water than necessary, and that
Oh.
almost 68 million pounds is spent on wasted energy every year.
Oh, wow.
So don't boil a full kettle if you don't need it all.
Wow. Okay. So there's some wasted energy, wasted water with the kettle boiling. There's got to be a downside to everything. You have the most advanced water heating technology in the world. There's got to be a downside. Okay.
Now let's dive into the history of the electric kettle because kettles
okay.
themselves have been in use for a long, long time.
Right.
But obviously, the electric kettle has taken some time to make its way into kitchens across the UK.
Right. Right. Okay. And just to be clear, most Americans, like we all know about the teapot or the tea kettle, the old version. Like our grandma might have had one, or we've seen it in movies or TV or something. We know about like a teapot that goes on the stove and whistles when it's ready. It's the electric kettle that we don't know about, that I'm learning about for for the first time here. Yeah, let's learn about the history. And I'm also interested in like how this became so big in the UK and was completely lost here in America. Because, you know, we might not have tea, we might not have a culture of drinking or enjoying tea, but we heat up water a lot and we have hot drinks that'd be useful to have this. So I'm a little surprised, even still, even without the tea, that we don't like have these or these aren't like for sale in a lot of our electronic stores or just the fact that they're so absent. I think there's a market for this in America. I would think so.
The word kettle itself originates from an Old Norse word meaning cauldron, and the
Oh,
first
okay.
kettle-shaped item was found in Mesopotamia, dating back to between 3,500 and 2000 BC,
Oh,
or would I say
geez.
3,500, and 2000 BC.
Okay.
For many years, kettles were heated over an open flame.
Yeah. This is what I think of when I think of a kettle. We are Americans. We're stuck 1,000 years in the past.
And silver kettles were a popular part of English tea tradition during the 1700s.
Okay.
But by the 19th century, people had had enough of this inefficient way to heat water, and things started to get more interesting. Kettles switched from iron to copper because it's a better conductor of heat.
Okay.
And in the 20th century, gas ovens with hobs,
Here
or
we go.
stoves, as we would say in America, means that people could now use a kettle that looks like this and was
Here we go. Yes. This is what I'm talking about. This is the kettle. We call it a teapot. This is what I'm familiar with right here. Okay.
Now, the electric kettle, using electricity to heat water rather than needing a hob, started to change everyone's lives, kind of, around 1890.
1890? What? 1890? I thought this was like relatively new. I don't know. At least like the 1900s or like 1940 or 50 or I don't know. Like, I don't know when the television was invented, but maybe around then? 1890? These things were around, electric kettles were around in 1890. I feel kind of like silly now. Like, these have been around for over 100 years. I wasn't expecting that. I thought this was like relatively new technology. I guess not.
Funnily enough, though the US doesn't really use electric kettles today, the Carpenter Electric Company in the US was one of the first to launch an electric kettle. This was in 1891.
What?
Right around this time, a UK company, Crompton and Co., also released their own electric kettle model.
What? We had it. It's like the pyramids or something. Whatever built the pyramids. We lost the technology of of how to build the Colosseum and the pyramids. We had the electric kettle, and we lost it. I guess it just wasn't popular enough here, but sure enough, in the end of the 1800s, America had the electric kettle at one point. Who knew?
However, the heating element had to be housed separately to the water as it couldn't be immersed in the water, so it was still pretty inefficient and it took over 10 minutes for the water to boil. The credit for the creation of the electric kettle
That's not 10 minutes is like not bad to me. Like boiling a pot of water. How quickly do electric kettles boil water? Is it like super fast? Wait a minute. How good are these electric kettles?
actually goes to a man named Leslie Large who worked for a company called Bullpit and Sons in Birmingham in the UK, not in Alabama. He wasn't actually the first to create the electric kettle, as this doesn't happen until 1922, 30 years after the first versions came around, but his design in 1922 allows for a submersible electric heating element more similar to the electric kettles of today.
Oh, interesting. So the actual electric kettle, as we know it, came around in like the 1930s, which is still like almost 100 years ago, so still pretty good.
Today, modern kettles have a safety cutoff function that means that the kettle will stop boiling water once it boils. Essentially, the heating connection is broken and electricity is prevented from reaching the element once it hits boiling point. This is much more practical for being able to actually walk away from the kettle and do other things. And
Okay, cool. This is this is some of the stuff I actually was curious about, like how the electric kettle works, like some of the perks, the technology. So you like plug it in, it runs on electricity, you like probably turn it on with a button, and then it just boils the water. You can walk away because it will turn itself off when the water starts boiling. Does it make like a sound? Probably. Does it like imitate the whistling sound if you want of like an old kettle? Probably, right?
And if you forget about the kettle boiling, no problem. Besides the knock to your electricity bill, nothing bad is going to happen.
Oh.
One major problem of the stovetop and whistling kettles were that they would keep boiling until someone manually turns off the heat. Which means if you forgot about it, you could end up with a burnt out kettle. Electric kettles are much more common in Commonwealth countries than in the US. I've mentioned multiple times before that Americans in general don't really use electric kettles.
No.
You can purchase them in America, but not necessarily common in kitchens.
I've never seen one. I've never seen one for sale. I bet you can get it on Amazon, though. I bet you.
I hadn't even seen one before moving to the UK. But British people are very proud of their kettles. And I loved some of the responses to this Reddit thread of someone asking why Brits use electric kettles.
Okay. I don't see any advantage to the electric kettle. Oh, that's kind of silly. There's obviously advantages. Because it's not 1905 anymore. Waiting 15 minutes for water to boil is not anyone's cup of tea. That's literally what we're doing out here. Or we're microwaving the water. We're happy. Like, I'm happy to wait like 10, 15 minutes for water to boil. It's expected. I didn't know there was any other way. Now I feel spoiled. I feel like I'm missing out on something here. What? My kettle is from the future. You can set the temperature 85 to 100 Celsius, whatever that means, Celsius. It tells you the temperature as it's heating up, and it gives a nice beep when it's done. This seems like, man, British people, you don't know how great you've got it. Stove? Are you in the Bronze Age? Microwave? Microwave? Sorry, pardon? How do you tell if the water is boiled rather than lukewarm or super boiled? You don't. You just, man, you kind of get used to it. You kind of like get a feel for how long you should put it in the microwave or... It's the Bronze Age. I feel like a barbarian now.
You can also buy kettle-themed merch from places like Etsy, including an I'll put the kettle on poster.
Wow.
And you can get a relatively plain and boring one like this that might be used in an office.
Okay, so this is like a super standard, boring, regular electric kettle. It's got liters on it. It has a handle. The spout, it must plug in somewhere. There must be a button on it. You can see how full it is. That's nice.
Or you can get super cutesy ones like this. That brings us to the end of our deep dive.
Oh, you can get like...
super cutesy ones like this.
Oh, it looks like an old kettle. Oh, that's fun. Oh, wow. You can get like a vintage looking kettle. This is very nice.
That brings us to the end of our deep dive on...
Oh, okay. And there we have it. Oh my God. You know, going into this, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to learn today, but I didn't expect kettles, electric kettles, to be so fascinating to me. I think it just is because we simply don't have this here, and it really is exciting. This was by Girl Gone London. And I got to give this a like. That was very enjoyable, very nice. Deep dive into electric kettles. Who knew? I actually did learn quite a few interesting things today. And man, I guess I still kind of boggles my mind why we don't have this more in the United States. But at the same time, man, how often do we need boiling hot water and need to pour it into a cup? If we're making hot chocolate, maybe if you're making certain types of coffee at home. Tea, not much of us drink it. Maybe some green tea. I think that's why we don't have it. It's the tea. It's the British, like, culture of having tea multiple times a day. Which totally changes the necessity for something like a kettle. Needing that hot water quickly and every day. That's fascinating to think about. This was quite enjoyable for me. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on electric kettles or anything here today. That'd be very fun to hear about. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Britain and British culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.